The room sits 41 floors up where the air is thin and the mahogany table costs more than the average car, but the real price of entry into the $2.3 billion decision-making circle is never written on the balance sheet. You are trading the $18 an hour internship for a seat where gravity is highest, learning the precise calculus of when silence is cheaper than the truth. Success in high finance is not just about mastering the org chart. It is a systematic exchange where your identity is the collateral for a power you no longer have the time to use. 41 stories above the pavement, the world changes its shape. Through the massive wall of transparent glass, the sprawling metropolis doesn't look like a home anymore. It resembles the intricate, cold veins of a high-end motherboard, pulsing with silent data. You are sitting with 11 other people around a slab of mahogany so polished and expensive it could easily be swapped for a luxury SUV without losing value. There is an agenda resting in front of you, a neatly printed roadmap of topics that every person in the room is collectively choosing to ignore. The air is heavy because the stakes are astronomical. When the CFO mentions $2.3 billion, he does it with the same casual indifference you'd use to order a coffee. He doesn't even blink. They are discussing the tactical dismantling of 3 entire divisions, a move that will effectively erase 14,000 jobs from the payroll by the end of the quarter. You find yourself nodding along with the group. It isn't a sign of agreement or understanding. In this rarefied air, the nod is a specialized dialect, a social currency that signals you belong in the room where the atmospheric pressure of power is at its peak. You've reached a point where your lifestyle is a series of scripts you didn't write. You drive a car that was chosen for you by a corporate lease agreement. You have an assistant who guards your schedule with the ferocious intensity of a border patrol agent protecting a sovereign state. Even your paycheck has become an abstraction. About 2 years ago, the specific digits stop having any connection to the physical world of groceries or rent. It's just a score on a screen now. But you have to remember where the climb began. Think back to being 22 years old. Back then, you were scraping by on $18 an hour, or maybe 25 if you were lucky enough to land in a high finance vertical. You were a tiny gear in a massive machine of 4,000 employees, a company pulling in $870 million in annual revenue, and if you were being honest, you understood 0% of how that money actually moved. Your identity was tied to a plastic badge where the word intern was printed in a font so small it felt like a whisper compared to everyone else's bold titles. It's Tuesday, and your high-level contribution to the firm involves wrestling with the paper tray of a jammed printer. You've sat through 3 consecutive meetings today where your presence wasn't even acknowledged with an introduction. By 9 p.m., you are still at your desk, agonizing over a spreadsheet because a manager needs it by dawn. You tell yourself this is just the price of admission. You are buying your future with late-night labor. When a senior executive finally takes you out for a coffee, they feed you the standard script: stay curious, speak up, remember that networking is everything. You dutifully record every word in a pristine notebook you bought specifically for this career, still clinging to the naive belief that the notes you take will actually dictate your success. The real education happens on a random Thursday. You are reviewing a deck and notice a glaring error on slide 34 of 60. The meeting starts in exactly 4 minutes. You have a choice to make, but you stay quiet. You are just the intern, and the momentum of the machine is too fast to stop. In that silence, a new kind of internal accounting begins. It's a silent appraisal of the soul, a balancing of the books where you measure the personal cost of speaking the truth against the professional cost of staying invisible. You quickly learn which of those debts is easier to carry. Fast forward 14 months. You've graduated to a $67,000 salary. You finally have a desk to call your own, even if the chair is a budget model that is slowly wrecking your lower back. The company is smaller now, 1,200 people and $340 million in revenue, which means you actually grasp the mechanics of the business. You can navigate the organizational chart perfectly, though the space beneath your own name remains a desert. Your Tuesdays are a digital marathon, 3 Slack channels constantly pinging, 2 Zoom calls where you have to keep your camera on and look engaged, and 1 call where you can finally relax because your manager is dialing in from their car. You spend your days constructing complex financial models that someone else will use to win the room. You proofread the narratives that someone else will speak into a microphone. Your name is nowhere to be found on the final product, but you accept it because the culture has convinced you that this erasure is the standard operating procedure. Then comes the moment that leaves a mark. You spearheaded a project from the ground up. You lived in the office. You were the one who stayed until 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night to kill a bug that threatened the entire launch. During the following all-hands recap, the director stands up to celebrate the win. They thank the team. Just the team. You sit there and watch a slide deck flash on the screen, searching for your name in the credits of a victory you built with your own hands, only to find it's been omitted. How does that feel? Have you ever experienced that specific, hollow sensation in your chest? It isn't quite the heat of anger, and it hasn't quite settled into the coldness of resignation. It's a middle ground that doesn't have a label in any dictionary, but it carries a very distinct, bitter aftertaste. It's the realization that you are becoming a ghost in your own life. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you've ever felt like a nameless cog in the machine, and suddenly, you aren't just doing the job anymore, you are playing the role of someone doing the job for a curated audience. It is a subtle shift, like a stage actor who begins playing to the back row instead of the character in front of them. You didn't wake up and choose this theatricality. It just seeped in. You can't even see the difference yet because your performance and the actual output are still tracing the same silhouette. You've moved from being the star player to being the coach, but without a whistle or a playbook. You were the heavy hitter, the top individual contributor, so they handed you 4 subordinates as a reward. But here is the catch. They gave you the title, but they forgot the manual. You were promoted because you were good at the craft, not because you were good at people. Now, you technically manage a team while reporting to a superior who is juggling 17 other fires and barely remembers you exist. Think about the scale of this machine. There are 600 of you working here, churning out $180 million in annual revenue. Your starting cut of that was $88,000, bolstered by a complex bonus architecture that seems designed to remain just out of reach. You've never actually touched that extra money. Instead, you spend your time in rooms like the one for the Thursday team sync. Have you ever done the math on a meeting like that? When you tally up the hourly rates of everyone sitting there, that 1 hour burns $340 of the company's capital. And for what? Usually, you walk away with exactly 1 action item. If that sounds like a massive waste of resources to you, hit that like button and tell me about the most expensive, useless meeting you have ever endured in the comments. The weight of it hits you on a random Tuesday. Tuesday isn't a special day, it's just the front line of the grind. You are still grinding through your old tasks while trying to choreograph the output of 4 other humans. You are fielding frantic pings from your boss and conducting interviews for a new role you aren't even convinced is necessary. Lunch isn't a break, it's just a sandwich eaten over a glowing keyboard. This is your standard operating procedure now. Then comes the real test of your soul, the underperformer. You have one person on your team who just isn't cutting it. You both know the truth. You've tried to hint at it twice, once in a private chat and once during the formal quarterly check-in. But you wrap the truth in layers of bubble wrap because you like them and because you have no idea how to actually be the bad guy. So, you just do their work for them. You manage around the dead weight. 6 months of this pass until you finally have to draft a performance improvement plan, but you write it with the trembling hand of someone drafting a letter of apology. Eventually, something inside you turns to stone. Your empathy doesn't vanish, but it starts wearing a lead-line suit of mail to protect itself from the radiation of the job. You begin to view people as mere variables in a profit equation. You see this shift clearly when you eventually move up. Now you are overseeing 11 people. You start performing for the camera instead of for the work. It just happened, like a slow-motion glitch in your internal software that you never bothered to patch. Suddenly, you aren't just a manager. You're an architect of a human infrastructure spanning 340 direct and indirect reports. You've traded your autonomy for a corporate travel budget and a reserved parking spot that sits empty most of the time. You only actually park there twice a week. The other 3 days? You're waking up in sterile hotel rooms, staring at the ceiling on Tuesday mornings trying to remember if you're in Chicago or Charlotte. You are a microscopic gear in a machine with 8,000 employees and $1.9 billion in annual revenue, yet you carry the weight of a $47 million profit and loss line on your shoulders. They pay you $195,000 in total compensation to carry that weight, but a huge chunk of that is equity. It vests in tranches over 4 years, which is just a polite way of saying the company has built a high-tech velvet trap. If you walk away, you leave a fortune on the table. It's a financial tether designed to keep you from ever feeling truly free. Think about how you spend your time. You sit through a 40-minute governance review just to justify a choice your team made 3 weeks ago. The people across the table weren't even in the room when the call was made, but now that the quarterly data has shifted, they've suddenly found their voices. You stay calm. You bury them in spreadsheets. You play the part perfectly, never letting on that you think this entire meeting is just a choreographed. You begin to swap the pursuit of what is equitable for the pursuit of what is legally airtight. You might think these are identical, but in this tax bracket, they are worlds apart. You are currently looking at a roster of 7 direct reports, each a high-level manager overseeing their own sub-armies of managers. Below your office floor sits a human pyramid of 400 people, a chain of command so vast you will never actually meet or name the majority of them. Your bank account reflects this distance with a base salary of $340,000 and a target bonus of $85,000, rounded out by equity worth $1.2 million over a 4-year vesting cycle, provided the ticker symbol holds its ground. But we all know the market is a fickle god. It does not always hold. Your life is now dictated by a schedule that functions like a high-velocity rail system, precisely engineered and lethal if ignored. Someone else operates the switchboard for your time, turning your calendar into a sharpened blade that cuts your day into sterile, non-negotiable increments. You are a key player in a public entity generating $9 billion in revenue, sitting on the operating committee where you digest the company's internal truths 3 full weeks before the rest of the world sees them on a ticker. It is a heavy crown, a burden of foresight that changes how you walk through a room. Have you ever felt the sheer pressure of knowing a secret that could move $1 billion? Tuesday arrives like a recurring fever. You have back-to-back sessions with directors who are currently drowning in crises. You try to help, but from your altitude, the ground is just a blur of colors. You are essentially a pilot trying to fix a mechanical failure in the tail of the plane from 30,000 feet up using nothing but a radio. You ask sharp questions and they provide polished summaries, but you are ultimately making life-altering choices based on a game of telephone, summaries of a reality you can no longer touch. This is where you realize that leading at this level is less about people and more about a breakdown in human knowledge. You are navigating by staring at a GPS screen while the actual road outside the window has been washed away by a storm. The gap between the digital map and the muddy territory grows wider every fiscal quarter. Then comes the real tax. One of your top performers, a rock star you brought on 3 years ago, hands in their notice. It is not about a fatter paycheck elsewhere. They leave a thoughtful exit interview behind, a PDF document that distills their heart into a bullet point. They did not feel seen. They describe you, the manager of their manager's manager, as purely theoretical. Think about that for a second. To the people doing the work, you have become a ghost in the machine, a name on a memo rather than a person. Does that sit right with you? Hit the like button if you have ever felt like just a number to your boss. As the company scales to $17 billion in revenue with 60,000 employees spread across 14 different countries, your world expands and contracts simultaneously. You now command a division of 2,300 souls. Your pen stroke alters global supply chains, resets real estate portfolios, and shifts headcount across 3 separate continents. You are surrounded by a moat of experts, risk committees, legal counsels, and a communications team that scrubs every word you speak until it is smooth and flavorless. On another Tuesday, you spend the morning in board prep and the afternoon in regulatory reviews. By 3 p.m., you are standing before a town hall of 2,300 people to explain a massive restructuring. You read the talking points. They are factually accurate, but they are hollow shells. They cannot be the whole truth because the legal department has not authorized the full story yet. You deliver these half-truths without blinking because you have learned that timing is a currency. Giving the right information at the wrong moment is a catastrophic expense. This isn't being a liar. It is just how the immune system of a massive corporation protects the host. You realize now that a small glitch you saw months ago was actually the opening chord of this entire symphony, but you were too deafened by the noise to hear the music. You are undeniably, incredibly good at this game. But you have to ask yourself, is the person who mastered this machine the same person you intended to become? The question is not a sound you make. It is a ghost that haunts your Sunday evenings precisely as the clock strikes 6 p.m. You do not voice it, but it settles into the room like a heavy fog. Have you ever felt that specific weight in your chest when the weekend ends? For you, it is not just the Monday blues. It is the realization that there are exactly 11 human beings in this entire country who actually grasp the mechanics of your Tuesday. They are the only ones who know what you really do. Everyone else sees the proxy statement where your name is etched in ink. They see the security detail that shields you during international travel. They see the $6.4 million you banked in total compensation last year from salary, bonuses, equity, and benefits. But they do not see the math of a life lived at this scale. Your world is managed by an estate attorney, a financial advisor, and a specialized wealth management team that convenes every single quarter. Why? Because you are navigating a financial landscape where the traditional labels of being comfortable or well covered are totally obsolete. You have graduated to a tier of wealth that demands a completely different dialect. Last year, your base pay sat at $1.5 million, but when you factor in performance equity and long-term incentives, your total disclosed pay packet surged past $24 million. You are the custodian of a machine generating $54 billion in annual revenue with a workforce of 210,000 souls. It started at $38 billion and 130,000 employees, but the growth has turned your daily decisions into something that rivals the gross domestic product of a mid-sized nation. You are the weather system for a small country. When you walk into a conference room, the air leaves it. Conversations die out. This is not because of your personality or your charm. It is because you have become a walking monument to the institution you represent. You are a human logo. And this Tuesday, that logo is sitting across from an activist investor who just swallowed 6.2% of the company stock. They have arrived with 4 distinct demands for how you should run your shop. You take notes, though not for them. You take notes for your legal counsel and your board preparations. You know their logic is sound, but it is a direct collision with the 5-year strategic roadmap the board signed off on 18 months ago. You are forced to hold these 2 contradictory truths in your mind simultaneously, a mental gymnastics routine that will last for several quarters. You tell yourself your conscience is pristine. After all, you were the one who authorized the restructuring that wiped out 4,000 jobs. You did not do it on a whim. You modeled the fallout, you ran the war games, and you stress-tested every possible alternative until the data screamed that the survival of the other 126,000 positions depended on this sacrifice. You believe this to be a mathematical necessity. You signed the order with a steady hand. Yet, there is a name that sticks to the back of your brain, a name from an email meant for HR that accidentally slipped into your inbox. You do not know why that specific string of syllables stayed when so much else was deleted. You have stopped trying to solve that puzzle. Your Tuesday is a gauntlet. It begins in Washington with a regulatory briefing that feels like a high-stakes chess match. Then comes the call with a European competitor, discussing a partnership so massive it could dismantle and rebuild your entire business model. Immediately after, you are deep in a crisis with your chief people officer regarding an executive in Asia, a situation requiring 3 lawyers across 2 time zones and the kind of absolute discretion that keeps you awake at night. You are accountable to 12 board members and 4.3 million shareholders who watch every syllable you utter. To you, speaking in public is no longer communication. It is an atmospheric condition where every word acts as a gear shifting a massive numerical lever. By the time you land and walk through your front door at 11 p.m., the house is silent. Your children are asleep. You are staring at a refrigerator door covered in the artifacts of a life you've financed but rarely seen. There is a drawing there, the letters DAD scrawled in that shaky, uneven hand of early childhood. You stand there in your kitchen for exactly 4 minutes. Just 4 minutes. This is the entire profit margin of your career. You are standing in a house that didn't even make a dent in your bank account, surrounded by healthy children who have every material advantage imaginable. But you know that those 4 minutes are the only reason you bothered to come home at all, and by tomorrow, you'll be on a flight to Tokyo. That specific emotional gravity, that 4-minute window, won't be waiting for you when the plane touches back down. Here is the kicker though, you wouldn't trade it back. No one mentions that part of the deal. You wouldn't give up the climb, but you'd give anything for someone to just acknowledge that you felt the cost. Your life has moved beyond the daily grind of the office. You exist in the stratosphere now, hovering somewhere above the building like a satellite. Your title is chairman. You show up for 12 meetings a year. You read the briefings. You offer opinions that other people treat as gospel, even though you never explicitly call them orders. Your net worth is sitting at $340 million. At this level, That number feels less like money and more like a map of a distant continent. It's a piece of geography you own but don't inhabit. It's real, sure, but it doesn't change the flavor of your morning toast. You even chair the committee that holds the guillotine over the CEO, a person you personally scouted and hired. You've learned to hold that kind of life-altering power with a loose grip, like a bird you might let fly. You sleep soundly at night, and you've stopped trying to figure out if that ability to sleep is profound wisdom or a total loss of humanity. You've made your peace with the mystery. What does a Tuesday look like for a man who has everything? You skim through the board pack. You dial 2 numbers. You grab lunch with a former senator to discuss things that won't make the news for months. Maybe you sit down and grind out 2 paragraphs for that memoir you've been tinkering with for 6 years, even though you suspect it will never see a bookshelf. But your mind isn't on the billion-dollar acquisitions or the years you spent grinding in Frankfurt, Singapore, and Tokyo. You aren't thinking about the stock ticker or your carry. You are hunting for moments you can no longer find on the map of your memory. You think back to a specific Tuesday in 1997. You were hunched over a spreadsheet late at night, whispering to yourself that this would all be worth it in the end. But was it actually a Tuesday? You can't be sure. The individual days have bled together, dissolving into a long, smooth architectural curve of a career. The machinery of the system gave you every single thing it promised in the brochure. You got the rewards you negotiated for. The contract was sitting there in plain English, and you signed it with your eyes wide open. The only problem was the fine print. It wasn't written in ink, it was written in the quiet disappearance of your own history. Right now, down in the lobby, a badge printer is humming to life. A 22-year-old is standing there, checking their reflection in their phone and straightening a crisp collar. They've rehearsed their elevator pitch 3 times on the subway ride over. They've got a high-end notebook tucked under their arm because they still believe the tools matter. They have no clue what this system actually pays out, and they definitely don't know what it's about to take from them. But they're about to find out. The elevator doors are sliding open. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if this resonates with you. Tell me in the comments, what's the one thing you'd never trade for a promotion? Hit the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the real cost of the C-suite.